Good day, and welcome to the Budding Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Bridges. In each episode, I cover my experiences, both good and bad, of being a business builder, as well as my journey through the crazy world of entrepreneurship to reach my goal of earning $10 million a year. Okay, welcome to November. Today is November the 2nd, 2023. We are on episode 120. As we go into this new month, it's a lot of fun to always get thinking about all the new things that are coming. I get to plan it out over the course of about a week, get things ready to go, and then be able to deliver on new books, be able to deliver on a new month of tasks, and continue doing what we're doing with the weekly series coming up with it. Today, I'm going to be introducing some things into the book category that I have done before. One of them is the $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. I'm still using that. I'm still reading it in small doses. It is a good reference. I'm starting to put that into the business. I am in the middle of Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. And this month I've added the book Boss Moves by Myron Golden. I've spoken about Myron just recently, about some of his videos and what have you. But this is a great book. It's a little under 200 pages, so it's not a heavy read. But it's called Boss Moves, and it stands for Business Optimization Success Secrets. It was taken from a roundtable that he did, I guess, a few years ago with the ClickFunnels environment, and basically talked about all the different ways that he is growing his business and how to grow your own, which is great. I mean, this is fabulous. I'm basically doing 3 different people that are doing the same thing 3 different ways, and each one of them is successful in its own right. So that brings me, a lot of comfort. It's kind of like back when I was doing 30 days from the ClickFunnels environment, and I was picking one person to look at how they would go from, if they lost everything and all they really had was basically a cell phone, a ClickFunnels account, how would they get back in the game? How would they get to where they were? Or better. And some of the people had actually done this. They'd been forced, especially in the housing bust that occurred back in about 2008. A lot of people lost everything, and several of these people were in that ballpark, and they were in that problem. And so they just basically said, this is how we got back into the game of being in business, which is great. So, which by that same time, I was also being introduced to Myron Golden as well. But the whole idea is that with the 30 days plan, you can literally see how they would go through and build the business. It gives you a lot of confidence as a business builder to look at how somebody else is doing it. And you don't have to copy it, but you do want to keep it in your mind that as you encounter new and unique problems, that you can think back to yourself, wow, how did somebody else handle that? And the more of a library you have of those solutions, the better you are. And you're going to be a lot better as a result of it. So this was something it's really nice. It's a simple book. It's not super cheap, not super expensive, but every page is just, gold, if you will. It's a great way to keep in mind some of the perspectives of, like Alex Hormozi, where you're doing a core 4. It's easy to implement. There are 4 things that you're trying to do, and that's it. I mean, that's really what the book is really about, those 4 things. So take that for what it's worth. As an interesting read for sure, definitely something that's very actionable. This is also not a book you want to be able to skip around in. You want to go right through it, so you gain everything in perspective front to back on how this all works. This month, I'm still doing my KPIs. I'm keeping track of how many emails, conversations I have, And right now, I have been going through in my email sequence. I'll talk a little bit about that later on when I'm doing the weekly part of this. And I'm keeping tabs on what's happening. And I'm seeing some good feedback that's simply coming through the numbers. And so as you go through and do this, you want to keep tabs on your KPIs. You want to make sure that your outgoing emails, your conversations, your DMs, everything is being tracked. I am making the move from cold to warm conversion, so it's especially important to keep those numbers down. Anytime you're making a shift, a change, anything like that, in your targeting, in your message, if you're going to add something different, and we'll talk about that, you want those tracking to be available to you. So you can see a before and an after, and you're only going to want to change maybe one thing at a time. Okay, so that's kind of the month process here of rolling through, going from cold to warm. You're going to want to warm up your audience a little bit. And you're going to want to make sure we'll talk about that later, but you're going to want to make sure you're doing that on a regular basis. Something else that occurred, and it was very recent, there's a book out there called The Traveler's Gift. Now, you may have heard of it, you may not have. It was something that I heard of recently, which is kind of interesting. It's a story, fiction entirely, in the sense that it is a story, and yet the concepts within it are very valuable. There were 7 decisions that were given to the main character, piecemeal, that were involved in him actually making a success out of his life, no matter how bad things had gotten for him. And one of the first ones, and it's something that I was very kind of surprised to see, and yet at the same time, it just makes so much sense. One of these first decisions is that you have to decide that the buck stops here, that I am responsible, that you are responsible, that we are responsible for our past and our future. It's a great reminder that much of what happens in this life is up to us. We make the decision of the good and the bad. There's not anything that we've had happen that we didn't actually generally create. In one way or another, we're responsible for everything good or bad that happens to us. And so that's the point of this, the first decision. And it's a great book. It's fairly short, easy to read. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it from just about anywhere. But it's an easy read. It's not a thick read. It's not super complicated. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? You can absorb it in one sitting very easily. It's not complicated, but it does give you natural breaks in the story. So this month is, for all intents and purposes, is going to be me introducing those 7 types of decisions into my own business, into my own life. And I'm seeing a major change on what I'm doing and how I'm making decisions now that I'm not worried about a W-2 job and flipping my schedule around. I get up when I'm ready to get up, and I go to bed when I'm ready to go to bed. And a lot of times, it wasn't that way. For the last 4+ years, I had to balance what was happening in the business with what was happening in the W-2 job. There've been a lot of, I can't say this for everybody, but for me at least, there have been a lot of benefits in letting that go. Now, yes, it did provide a little extra spending money, and yes, it was nice that it came on a paycheck,
without question. It just happened every 2 weeks. But when we're going through and focusing on our business, anything that takes us away, anything that takes us out of the moment is a problem. And we have to decide that we're going to fix it or that we're going to allow it to continue to interfere with our life. So I can't tell you what to do. I can just simply say it was such a great decision, and I've already seen a major turnaround in not just what I'm accomplishing, but what I'm able to communicate to other people, how I'm seeing what I'm doing, and how I'm seeing it kind of from an outsider's view. It's nice. That's the key of looking at your business, is looking as an outsider. And when you can do that, you can be a lot more successful in reaching other people. So that's something that I would recommend if you haven't thought of it and you're hanging on to that job. Yeah, the buck stops here. So that was The Traveler's Gift, and a great book. So let's dig into this week. I continued my blog series. This week was negotiating with Jim Camp. And Jim Camp is, I mentioned him before, he's no longer with us, but he was a real bear when it came to negotiating. And not just because he was like he would beat people up or anything, he was just good at what he did. And he did negotiating and had his own school. And I've talked about this before, I'm not going to belabor it. Go to the blog, kind of get a little bit of reading on it, and just recognize that this is something that has made a major change in my own business. And that's what this 5-part series is about. Next week, I'm going to go into pricing. And that one is going to be kind of a wide open view. We'll be looking at pricing of how it's helped me and worked with me on what I'm doing and made me actually much more successful. There's a gentleman, I believe his name is Dan Loke. He is a high ticket sales trainer. And one of the things is he says, how would your life improve simply by adding a 0 to what you charge? And it brings a good question, on pricing. How does it affect you? So I'll go into that a bit more next week on our podcast, as well as on the blog that's going to be coming out. Again, it's blog.randyBridges.com/TBE, The Budding Entrepreneur. Okay. In my email series, we've talked about this before, where I had a 5-sequence option, 5 problems that a typical law firm that's growing will face, and what solutions and what outcomes come from that. And I made a change this week because I started seeing a drop-off in the numbers of what was happening in my email. People were getting overloaded very quickly. And when you get 4 emails a week, it adds up quickly, especially over a 5-week period. So what I chose to do is take a basic nurture sequence and warm everybody up to that, and then set up an automation part that said that if you just click this button, it kicks off an automation that will automatically add that person into this long form sequence. And if they want to continue, then you do the same thing at the end of your first part, which is just the first 2. And so people have a choice of whether they go into that. And these are, again, looking from the outside of your business and looking at how people are seeing it. And the numbers are telling me, these KPIs, these marketing processes, I can see and keep track of the unsubscribes. I can keep track of the bounces. It was interesting to find out that just last Friday, a whole bunch of people in the legal field got fired. And you know how I know? Because my email went out on Monday and they all bounced. They were being delivered on Wednesday, Thursday, and come back on Monday, bang, they're dead, gone. Not just kind of moved around, I mean literally gone. I was like, wow, that was interesting. But see, if I wasn't tracking those kind of numbers, I wouldn't see that because I have to actually remove all those people. So I keep my delivery numbers as close to 100% as I can. And for one group, I think there was about 300 people, 6% of them started bouncing on Monday morning. And I would go and check myself because I don't want to overreact or anything. Yeah, sure enough, those email addresses are gone. They bounce immediately. And it's like, wow, that was special. Okay. Anyway, so I've made that 5 problem sequence an option. And I'll just, like I said, the first 2, and if you want to continue on, click here and it'll kick you over to the next one. These are in my CRM, they're called trigger links. And basically, you build the trigger link in there and you call it and it says, okay, go to here to a web page or whatever and acknowledge that somebody's been added. And then it automatically puts a tag in to that particular trigger link is now associated with the next sequence. So they can unsubscribe at any time and they can, do whatever they want to do. But this gives a little more freedom to people so that I'm not having to do all this crazy stuff. It's only for the people that actually want it. And so learning experience on this, it's a good thing. Part of it is learning how to go about your own CRM. I've had this CRM since I think April or May. And in that time frame, I've put it through its paces. But this was something that was new to me that I had to find out and research and just simply say, how do I do this? Another thing about the email series is I have a tool. It goes out and gets out of databases all the different contacts. And you can set up what type they are. Do you want just people? Do you want companies? Do you want all the details? And where before I was just looking at individual cities, just West Lafayette and Lafayette, or just Indianapolis, I simply took the entire state of Indiana, put it into this list, and then went through and scrubbed everything. If they didn't have an email address, I got rid of them. If they had it was like their first initial and their last name, and all of my emails call people by their first name, those have got to go. And if they didn't have a last name, I also would just get rid of them. Then I would get down into the role of what people are playing. If I didn't have enough information, that's the way that it goes. That person gets scrubbed. I did Indiana. I did California in the San Francisco Bay Area. We talked a little bit about that. I've now done Ohio, and I just did Kentucky, and doing the whole state. And it's kind of funny because you would think there would be just a boatload of attorneys in all of these states, and there are in California, in like Indiana, in Kentucky, in Ohio. The number of attorneys is relatively low, and I was kind of surprised by that. When you actually get down to the point where they're a principal, they're a partner, or they're an attorney, you realize how few attorneys are actually managing all the firms that are going on. By doing it by state, I'm able to let it run on its own overnight, get everything it's going to, and then come in and start sorting the next morning for something that I'm doing. And then I'm going to start going through after the sequence is over. I will start calling them, doing the outreach. So I know that I have a good telephone number. I know that I have a good email address, and I know that I have a good contact. The last piece that I want to cover today, it's a process called Sales Scripter. And it's one guy does everything. He's really good. I've used his stuff before when it first came out, and it was very basic. It's more like a software tool. It gives you the availability of seeing and training on all the things that you need to do in order to be successful in sales. Now, marketing is easy to me. I've done it now for so many years. Operations, that's easy to me. And I've done that for so many more years. But in the category of sales, I'm what I call an accidental salesperson. I learned to do sales on a warm target. It's the cold side of things, the know, like, and trust factor, and being able to provide all that. So Sales Scripter is really good for me, at least, because it does have videos. It does have the toolkit itself. You can add whatever you need, and the owner is really doing everything he can to dig into this and help you out. And I've been following this guy. Gosh, I lived in California probably 3 years before I left. So we're talking about 2015 when I was first introduced to him. And everything now is so much better. If sales is your thing that you are having a trouble with, maybe Sales Scripter, just like the name implies, maybe that will do something for you. It's not super expensive. They have different plans, and you get different toolkits and do different pieces. And so if you're in that category, I recommend you go check it out. Again, I'm not an affiliate. I don't make anything for it. This is actually a tool I'm using for myself. So that's kind of a wrap up of where we are. We've got our blog series. We got our email series. We've got our tools for Sales Scripter. Digging into the books by Alex Hormozi, Russell Brunson, and now Myron Golden. So much of this is just expanding my own knowledge way beyond where I had it before. Being able to track my KPIs, make this cold to warm conversion, and implement some of these 7 decisions in my life. This is where November is going to get real interesting for me. And if you are doing anything like this, man, it's just going to be a wild ride. So for now, going to sign off. This is Randy Bridges for The Budding Entrepreneur, wishing you the best in your health, your wealth, your business, your family, everything about you. Take care. We'll see you next week with a new episode.